Welcome back to another episode of the Patio Pondering Podcast, where we're after clear thinking in the complex agriculture. Today, we have a auspicious occasion. This is the first swine nutritionist I've ever interviewed on Patio Pondering after 30 episodes. So today we have Dr. Trey Kellner from AMVC via Iowa State University joining us. So welcome, Trey.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jim. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing being the first, but we'll see how it goes.
It'll be great. I'm really looking forward to our conversation because Trey and I both are swine nutritionists, but we're in different seasons of our career. Next month will be 28 years since I graduated from Kansas State, and it's 9 years for Trey. So we've seen different changes in the swine industry over our different careers. And as I was telling Trey before we started, I started at Purdue in 1989, where in Allen County, DeKalb County, there are pigs on every corner. And now we don't have that. So it's just a change in the industry. So I'm interested to hear how our conversation goes with our different views of our trajectory. So Trey, you're early in your career. When you look at the U.S. swine industry, what concerns do you have as we continue to evolve as a pig industry?
Sure. Boy, great leading question. This could probably take the full hour right here, right? Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is, where does our capital come from, Jim? I think when I look at our swine industry, to maybe greenfield a 5,000 head sow farm might be 25 to 30 million today in terms of US. So we're remodeling or retrofitting 20, 30, 40-year-old sow farms today. Because the 22 through 24 aren't all that profitable, and we're not sure how this current profit window will last or how long it will last. And then same for a contract finisher. If you want to own your finisher, we're talking 1.5 to 2 million, for a 2,400 head space. So where does that capital come from in 2030, 2040, 2050? Throughout my career, when the average pig owner is probably somewhere between 65 and 75 today in terms of years old. So, if building costs continue to increase, and if we run out of retrofit opportunities with our current facilities, where are we going to raise pigs? Where does that capital come from? Does that come from quote unquote outside, so not traditional row crop interest or hey, we love pig production interest, is that coming from outside? Does our industry become even more integrated, in terms of, outfits that own feed milling and sow farms and finishing and packing and distribution and, even commercial, right? We've kind of seen different models throughout North America that have done that in the past. Do we see more models like that? What does protein demand look like as well, throughout those capital needs? Do we have periods of profit, to where that is, a little bit more achievable? Or, hey, our good times we're just barely above break even. So we're just going to continue to invest what we need to do in our facilities to just maintain production. I think that's the first thing that comes to mind is just capital. And where does that come from, and what does that look like 5 years from now, clear out to 30 years from now? The second deal is then labor and resources around that. We continue to work on automation. We continue to work on efficiencies, and in scale. But we're still at a bottleneck. And I'm not sure what the next labor savings piece is. We've seen a lot of demos of, robotics in terms of, power washing, robotics in terms of, or AI in terms of heat detection or farrowing detection or market weight detection or whatever that may be. But where's truly that labor savings piece going to occur in 2030, 2035, and 2040? I'm not exactly sure where that is, Jim, if you know what I mean, right? I'm not sure that we found by 2035, we're going to save 2 people per sow farm because of this. That's not very clear today, right? So where does those 2 people still come from 10 years from now? I'm not sure today, right? So that's outlying. I think also then the training of our leadership, at an ownership level, right? We talked about the age of the average pig owner today. So where does that ownership come from? right? Because that boardroom level is going to set the direction for what nutritionists, veterinarians, production managers, growers, sow farm managers, clear down the list are going to do. So what does our leadership and ownership look like, 5 years from now, 20 to 30 years from now, right? Because they're going to set the direction for what we do going forward. So I would say those are the first two things to kind of stop this monologue, Jim, and get you back to asking some better follow-up questions is capital and people talent, right? Those are probably my first two biggest concerns for the rest of my career.
What's interesting about those two, neither one of them have anything to do with the pig.
Yes, exactly right. Bingo.
And I think your talk about capital, if we look outside just pigs and we look at agriculture in general, we're a low ROI business. I remember one of the first sales meetings I was at when I worked for ADM, and Chuck Leffer got up and he was talking about profitability, and he said, we're a 5% business, maybe 10. And this was pre-China vitamins, so it was the good times. And it hit me like 5%. And after all those ag econ classes we went through, and we were talking about ROI and how you calculate it, and can we get 25 and 30, we're a 5% business.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we attract outside money? That's the huge question. I mean, the good thing is we're a 5% business, and it ebbs and flows, but at 5%. But if we look at ag in general, crop farmers are hurting. There's talk of more money coming from crop farmers, nothing about pig farmers or beef farmers. So I think capital ag-wide is going to be a huge deal. And when we segment it out in pigs, it's probably going to be even more difficult because we're more concentrated.
Yes. And I think that barrier to entry, because of the scale that our industry has evolved into, is very difficult. As we said, 5,000 head sow farm to enter our business, 25 million. And that's not even talking about the wean to finish piece or the how do I gain access to shackle space piece, right? Or, insurance and all those things, LOC, that's just the physical structure that we're talking about. So, I think that barrier to entry, it's not just like you can come in with $1 million and invest in our industry. Good luck, right? And that's a big number. So, I think that's the other thing too that, I just wonder about, as I drive up and down the road. If someone wanted to get started in this industry that had a passion, what would that look like, right? I think when you start to napkin out some numbers, it becomes a large number really, really fast.
Yeah, an insurmountable number.
Yes, bingo. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If you look at the labor aspect, if you look at the person that's at Iowa State, Purdue, Illinois, there's not a bunch of farm boys like you and me that are in the animal science department anymore.
No, there's not. So if you look at the demographics of the current undergrad population or grad school population in animal science, right, it's probably 75 to 80% female, probably 85 to 95% never been on a farm, right? Or didn't grow up with a stockmanship, type background by any means. Right. So that is our next level of veterinarians, nutritionists, leaders, production managers, right? Technical people, researchers, right? So, I tried to spend time at the land grant institutions that I attended, to provide some feedback and some training and lecture and serve on advisory boards to be like, hey, here's kind of the skill set or the training that this next generation of students is going to need. To help us on day one. And then hopefully, year 28 of their career within our industry, right? Cause it is different than it was when I started college in, 2006. It's different when you started college, back in the 80s and 90s. And our industry needs to be prepared for that. And we need to help those land grant institutions evolve, like we're involving as well. So, I think that's time well spent on all our behalfs to provide that feedback to our alma maters or institutions that we're closely aligned with.
The silver lining, though, is the people that are not the farm boys don't have the bad habits that you and I did when we came out.
Sure.
Like, well, here's what we did on our farm, and we clipped little teeth this way, and we did tails. The people that we get on these operations out of non-traditional, they're clean slate, so we can train them any way we want.
Yes. Bingo. And that openness to, they don't know the dogma, right? Like the dogma is established culture, right? Like they don't know that, right? So in terms of just saying, well, why don't we do this? Or, thinking outside the box, can be really, really good. So yeah, I agree, Jim. There's pros and cons to everything, but there's a lot of pros, with the students of today that are going to help our industry for the next, 20 to 40 years.
The other thing we need to talk about on a labor standpoint, who are going to be the people that are going to do that pressure washing job?
Yeah.
It's not going to be the children of the people that are doing it now.
Correct. Yeah. And also, that labor and that turnover, right? So, I'm sure, Jim, as you were growing up, your parents or, the friends of your parents might have had one or two jobs in their career, right? The peers of my generation, right, might have, 5 to 10 jobs in their career, right? And who knows how many jobs, my kids will have, or, the current undergraduate population that we have. And then same with those that, don't have advanced degrees, their turnover rate in employment is way higher than it's ever been in U.S. history, right? So, used to be, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, you might, go to high school or whatever your level of education was. You have a great, stable, job, with benefits, and, it's the ability to be in the middle class in the U.S., quote unquote, the American dream as we think about it now, right? Today that is a lot less clear. It's more murky. It's more cloudy, right? So, how do we recruit that labor? And once again, I go back to that, hey, we have a 2,500 head sow farm or a 5,000 head sow farm, and that's it. And how do we make this sustainable? So they might have, let's just say 7 to 12 employees on that farm. If they would lose 2 to 3 for whatever reason, let's just say one decides to become a new parent. One decides to get another job. One decides to go back to their home country or whatever it may be. Boy, they're down 25 to 30%. How do they replace that? So what happens is sometimes that barn owner gets drugged back into processing pigs, right? And doing chores and doing that. So what does that look like 10, 15 years from now? Yeah, I think that's really, really difficult. Our system, is unique there to where we have an advantage that we're larger and we kind of focus on that employee and labor piece. So we're able to move, things around where a farm is down, 2 to 3 people at a time. But I often think about, those peers of mine that, hey, we're kind of on the smaller side. When they lose 2 or 3 people, how are they going to replace those, especially quickly? Right? It's one thing to be like, oh yeah, we're back to full staff 12 months from now, but what do you do in the interim? Right? That's really tough. That's a question that our industry, didn't get asked 20 years ago. It didn't get asked 25 years ago or 30 years ago, but is being asked today, every single day. And I have a feeling that gets, that question even becomes more important 5 to 15 years from now, Jim. So, and honestly, it kind of depends on what the U.S. strategy is on immigration, to be honest with you there, Jim, right? Is the, the current, or future administrations pro, bringing in, those type of labor, opportunities to allow us to continue to, produce at this high a level? Or are we going to have to think out of the box and think differently, because of those policies in place? Chances are we'll probably have to do both, right? We tend to change every 4 years, so we're going to get practice at both, I think, Jim.
Well, not to get political, but the U.S. immigration system is fucked.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. It's a mess. For whatever reason, it's become that way. And
yes,
we have to address it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's going to be bipartisan. Yeah.
And we have to find some stability to it, right? So as a young leader, in our organization, we have to provide some stability to it. If we're talking about maintaining or expanding, what does our labor pool look like? Well, that's a question that you need to know, right? And have some certainty behind it, right? So yeah, that's a big one, for sure.
Well, we haven't talked about nutrition at all.
Yeah, well, that's the easy part, Jim, at least I think.
I remember back to one of my conversations with Kim Friesen when he was at Tyson. We were at animal science meetings, and I'm working on finish my master's, start my PhD, and I'm green as a gourd. And I asked Kim, "Hey, what's the most important thing that you're working on at Tyson?" And I'm deep in energy to lysine calorie ratio, all this kind of stuff. And he said feed, and I'm like, Kim, duh. And he goes, I just want feed, and I'm like, I got it. He said, I don't care if there's sow feed in the nursery feeder. I don't care if there's finishing feed in the sow feeder. I just want feed in the feeder or the feed bin. And I think that's one of the things that we forget about as nutritionists. There's so much more about what we do than worrying about an amino acid or a mineral content. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes, for sure. I definitely agree with that, Jim. So yeah, the execution piece is the secret sauce. Right. I'm sure if we compared our current formulations, we'd be about 99.0, homologous. You know what I mean? Like very, very similar. Right. The key is implementation and execution. Right. So, I have my feed desk, right out here. That's very close by. And they're the people that actually make this happen. Right. So I could design whatever formulation or budgets or feed program design, if we don't get it executed and implemented, my position is worthless, right? So yes. So let's just start there, right? In terms of the feed execution piece, Jim. So yeah. So from my perspective, ensuring that, we are executing is extremely important. And what that means is from the feed desk to the feed mill to the slat level. So first of all, do we understand our ingredients? And is our quality assurance program allowing us to make accurate and precise formulations? Do we have the best knowledge available to formulate to hit our targets? Then second of all, then what are our targets, right? So I'm in a unique position where I probably work with 20 to 25 different business units. Everything here in West Central Iowa to Indiana to Ohio to Arizona to California. I'm feeding everything from milo to peas to barley. I'm trying to hit a 310-pound pig and a 260-pound pig in a roaster that goes to California, right? So all those different markets, which makes my job really, really fun. So what is the target, right? What are we shooting for? How much space do we have? How many days on feed do we have? How much average daily gain do we need to have to hit those weight targets? Are there any carcass parameters that we need to worry about? Percent lean, yield, quality, IV, all those things. And then from there, hey, we kick out some formulations, some budgets, some feed med protocols, and some protocols and practices at the slat level. Cool. From there, then what? Right? So your protocols and practices, go to your production staff, your growers and your managers. Is that clear, concise, and easy to understand? Or are those so complicated that it's misinterpreted or not followed or they go rogue, etc.? And is it easy to follow in multiple languages as we discussed earlier, Jim? So it could be clear in English, but it's not clear in Spanish, right? So how do we make something that's really easily and repeatable? You might come with a really cool acronym in English or something like that to be like, oh, this is easy to follow. Everyone can understand this. In Spanish, it doesn't make any sense, right? So just keep that in mind too, right? It's got to be clear. We were talking about, Latin labor on the, sow farm side. On the finishing side, that's becoming an increasing piece of the role and job too, right? So even just things such as mat feeding and gruel feeding and, feeder adjustments, right? We need to make those really clear both in English and Spanish, for sure. And then from there, then the feed desk, the guys that were receiving the feed orders need to know exactly what your feed program design is, maybe even better than you do, right? So they need to be able to execute those orders, get it to the proper mill. And when those situations occur, they can adjust and, make sure that they're following that as best as possible. For example, right before this call, we had a load of feed that was going to a site that was numbered 5 and a site that was numbered 6. And it all got dumped at 6, right? So now we're off budget. So what do? Right? Of course, we make feed for 5, but then how do we adjust 6, right? Well, hey, here's our rules and guidelines when we go off script, right? So they know that really well. That's clear. And then from there at the feed mill level, hey, are we allowing our feed mills to have accurate projections so they have our ingredients ready to go? So they aren't surprised by a bolus of orders. All of a sudden, like, whoa, where'd this come from? Well, sorry, we have 10,000 more pigs on feed this week than we usually do. Or, hey, we're now marketing pigs at 305 instead of 285 like we were 3 months ago because economics has changed. Well, that changes how much ingredients they're chewing through now. So have we gave them that lead time and that notice to where all of a sudden they're not like, hey, we ran out of this amino acid. Or, hey, this is our last bag of your VTM. When are we getting more? Or, hey, we brought in bakery for you, or whatever it is, wheat mids for you, or whatever it may be. Hey, we ran out. What do you want us to do? So communication is extremely important. I think that's the summary of this monologue here. That's extremely important. So I guess, to re-summarize that, Jim, the easy part is, hey, amino acid levels, energy levels, calcium phosphorus ratios. That's the easy part. That's the part that we as individuals can control. From there, then it's like taking your kid to preschool for the first time, right? It's like, man, I really hope that this works. From there, you have to have great people that you've communicated with very clearly, and have a great deal of trust in, and then have multiple verification steps throughout that process to ensure, hey, here was the design and the vision and the formulation. Does this get executed or not? And that's literally the secret sauce. If you can get that done and you can have multiple checkpoints and great talented people working with you, whether that's the slat level or the feed desk or the feed mill level, life as a nutritionist is pretty great and becomes pretty fun.
Then you can sit around and have those discussions about it. I think your release factor for phytase is off 0.01.
Yes, exactly. Right. It's kind of similar to, they have those levels of humanity, right? So if you get stranded on an island, what's the first thing you're going to worry about? Well, food, water. Then from there, shelter, right? So et cetera. So Jim, as you were talking to Kim, right? He might have been here on this plateau. I just know what feed, right? This is where I'm at, right? It's food and water right now, right? Where, sometimes you might get up the scale where it's, hey, let's relook at our phytase release, is that appropriate or not? And I've just known throughout my 9 years is that sometimes can change not only by position, but within a position, right? There's times where I'm clear at the top of that pyramid where, hey, let's take a deep dive on this. There's also times I'm firefighting, right? We're in kind of crisis management here, right? And sometimes that can happen within the day. That also makes the job fun as well, right? So,
oh yeah,
there's always a problem to solve. I think that's the cool part about being a nutritionist. There is always a problem to solve. It's just whether you get to that 19th or 20th problem today, or you get to it on Monday, right?
There's 3 things in what you talked about. One, you set up guardrails for where you kind of want to be for a system or a mill. You communicate those, and you and your team have an understanding that feed is more than just what comes out on the Brill nutrient level sheet.
Yes.
How do you communicate well so that when you do have those fires, they don't turn into full-fledged forest fires and you can put them out?
Sure. So I think the first is you have to be approachable, right? Mm-hmm. So how you set your communication, let's just say when a fire does occur or a crisis does occur, something comes to your level, how do you respond to that first? Do you get stressed? Do you fly off the handle? Do you, all those things? Then be like, well, I'm not doing that again. I'm not asking that person to help me out in this situation, or what should I do, right? So the first of all is you just, I have the saying, math is the only true science. So can we get into numbers and can we fix it, right? Math is one of my strengths. So if we can get those logistics into math, I really like our chances of figuring this out. So, okay, what occurred? What was the timeline, right? Okay, so then from there, okay, so that's what occurred. That was the timeline. Okay, what are our potential options to fix it, right? Mm-hmm. We could do this, or this. And then you get them involved in that process, right? What would you suggest? Knowing that we have option A, B, and C, what do you think is best, right? Because now you have a buy-in. And more importantly, now you've walked them through your thought process. So for some reason, if you're working on another fire, or if you're at a sow farm and unavailable and unreachable, or if you're in, if we're talking about being overseas, right, or whatever it may be, now they know, oh, well, here's what they've done in previous situations. I now know the decision tree to walk through this problem, right? So I can walk through this. And then at the very end, I might say, hey, here's what I thought through. Do I have the green light to do this? Yes or no? Right? And all those things, right? So from there, you just kind of work, okay, so option A, option B, option C. All right, we're going to go with option B. And then who do I need to communicate that to, right? Do I need to communicate that back to the feed mill level? Do I need to communicate that to the slat level? Do I need to communicate this to an ownership or a production manager or boardroom level, right? To say, hey, here's what occurred. Here was the timeline. Here was our options. We're going to go with this. Here's why. Here's the resolution. And we'll validate whatever that timeline is with, hey, this worked or this didn't, right? So you just kind of got to walk through that very clearly. One of my favorite books and audiobooks and movies is The Martian. Right. First of all, he's a scientist. He's a botanist trying to grow, potatoes with his own fecal matter on Mars. And what I really like about that, it's very similar to being a production nutritionist or a consulting nutritionist, right? Is it's just like, okay, what's the math, right? What do we need to do today? It goes back to that, food, water, shelter. Yeah. How do we get off of Mars, right? Once we get to that top of the pyramid. Very similar though, right? So when something occurs, when a problem occurs, okay, what occurred? What happened? Can we learn from it, right? You might want to write that down off to the side. And then from there, hey, it's just option A or option B. Here's what we're going to go with. Who do we need to communicate with? And then how do we validate that? And if you do that all very calmly and, concisely, when things do occur, people will be like, hey, this happened. Sorry, what do I do about it now? Versus then, hey, it happened and they never tell you, right? Mm-hmm. Or you might not find it till you're looking at your production data or even worse, your closeout data 5 months from now to be like, whoa, what happened there?
Yeah.
And you take a deep dive into it and it's like, oh my goodness, what were we doing, right? That's the last thing that you want, right? You want people to be like, hey, it's not ideal. It's not perfect. What do we do about it? Right. So that's a culture deal. That's a like a me deal, right? That's a you deal to make sure that, you're being approachable, on their worst day, right? Hey, I messed up. What do we do about it? Hey, it happened. Cool. How do we fix it? Right.
Okay. The nice thing about a podcast, and it's being my podcast, I can be controversial. And I would contend that our current method of making swine nutritionists as PhDs does not completely make people that are problem solvers that can communicate well. And I think about some of the recent PhD defenses that were announced by several land-grant universities, and I look at them going, this person can't do what Trey Kellner does. Is my impression wrong? Incomplete?
It's a great question, Jim. I don't know if it's wrong, and I don't know if it's incomplete. I think it's somewhere in between those, right?
Okay.
I would just speak from my perspective first. I was really fortunate. Sometimes you just get to grad school at the right time with the right person, in the right spot, and you're like, oh, this is the perfect fit. And I got great advice from one of my dear mentors, Roger Arnston, as I was visiting grad schools and going through. He was in Lincoln. I was an undergrad at the University of Nebraska at the time, and took me out to dinner. And he's like, hey, I just want to talk to you about your grad school options. I'm like, Roger, that would be awesome because I'm just not sure what to do. Yeah. And so anyway, kind of talked me through it. And he went through the pros and the cons in each. And he's like, hey, John Patience at Iowa State would be a great fit for you. And he's like, maybe not for everyone, but for you. And he's like, the reason is, I think you want to be in a position where I'm currently in now, right? So, leadership, opportunity for partnership, etc. And he's like, hey, John's at the point of his career where he's going to take time, to train the next generation. and isn't necessarily worried about publishing in Science or Nature, even though that would have been cool, right? Or necessarily worried about, getting tenure, or necessarily worried about all those things. He's just trying to create well-rounded individuals that are prepared to lead our industry for the next 35 to 40 years, right? So let me break that down from that perspective. I think there are times where our faculty are so pressured, whether it's the tenure process or the funding process, and that is limited to where the opportunities to work on the soft skills, the opportunities to work on the economic skills, the opportunities to work on leadership and problem-solving skills, unfortunately get set to the side, because those faculty members have to get grants in a competitive market, and those grants become more limited and more limited. For example, I sit on the research committee for Iowa pork producers, and it's a great committee. We do a great job there. But our budget went from $1 million to basically $500,000 in the past 10 years, right? So it is basically decreased by half since since I've been on that committee, right, in the past decade. And we had, I believe, 46 grant applications, and we're going to fund probably 5 to 6.
Yeah.
Right. And that's from pork producers, right? Like when I'm sure 20 years ago, the Staleys of the world, the Payos of the world, all those, individuals, that was kind of like, not quite a slam dunk, but hey, if I have something that I'm working on that the pork producer is going to be aligned with, we can get this funded, right?
Yeah.
And then you look at the USDA or the NEFA level or what that is, that's tough. And then, there's very little quote unquote, just general funds anymore. So what happens is, first of all, we have less institutions training swine nutritionists, right? We've become specialized, and animal science departments have unfortunately had to be either made that decision or forced into that decision and say, hey, we're only going to do these 3 or 4 things. We can't do these 20 things like we used to be a well-rounded animal science department, right? We have to be known for swine nutrition or feedlot nutrition or cow-calf nutrition or whatever that may be, right? And then from there, then I think those programs, due to funding and grant writing, have been forced into this kind of situation to where they are cranking out research trials and working on things that they know will get funded, versus then, hey, here's a great training opportunity for this particular student that may or may not have particular current relevance to the pork industry. It might 10 years from now or 20 years from now, right? But in terms of current relevance, it really doesn't, or it's not a big monetary deal, because of this. So I'll be a little controversial back here, Jim. We attended Midwest Animal Science meetings together about a month ago. I don't know how many times I heard, oh boy, all that's being presented is as U.S. soybean meal research. And I'm like, that's true. They're also the only ones that are basically funding research, right? Like what you see at Midwest is a reflection of what is being funded, right? So
thankfully they have some money to fund.
Exactly. Or think about our graduate student training that we would have now, right? So I'm like, hey, I hear the criticism, but this is a reflection of what's currently being funded. And I applaud the U.S. Soybean Meal Association for stepping up and helping us train the next generation of swine nutritionists, right? So here's what I would encourage, the peers that I've went to graduate school now that are now faculty members, and those that might be a little bit more seasoned that are training, the next generation of swine nutritionists is find creative ways to work on the soft skills. We've had graduate students that have done 2-3 week shadows, with us here at AMVC, where they've maybe spent a week with me. Hey, here's what my week of chaos and strategy and firefighting looks like. And then we might spend them a week with a production manager or veterinarian. Hey, here's what it looks like at the slat level. And then, hey, we spend them a week at the feed desk and the feed mill level, right? To try to get at least a snapshot or at least understand the jargon and the diction of, hey, This is what happens with a feed program beyond formulation or beyond research that they don't get exposure to. So find opportunities like that. We were very fortunate at Iowa State, where our lab group brought in an industry person at least once a month for lunch, to just have them, just like we're doing on this podcast, just chat. No sales pitch. Just, hey, here's who I am. What do you want to know? Right? What questions do you want answered? What, et cetera. Find times to not only have them attend scientific conferences, but find ways to get them to production conferences or forums or whatever it may be. There are different groups. Jim, you've been a part of groups to where, hey, we're going to get these groups of 5 to 6 nutritionists together, and we're going to, share data and talk about things that we're working on together, or advisory boards. Hey, talk to those sponsors and be like, hey, if you have one of these groups, could I send two of my students just to sit in a corner and just listen? Yeah. Whatever that may be, just find ways to do that. And I would say for graduate students, it's okay if you take advantage of those opportunities and you graduate 6 months later.
Yeah.
Graduate school is not a race, nor should it be. And it's okay if it takes you 4 years to finish a PhD or 2.5 years to finish a master's. If that extra 6 months allows you to be better prepared to handle a boardroom or better prepared to handle a slat level conversation in 2 different languages, you're going to be way more successful for your next 35 years and probably make way more money than you did if you just finished, you rushed to the finish line and got out and then went, okay, you're incomplete. Right? As you well put, is our training of graduate students wrong or incomplete? And I'm like, well, I'm not sure I can disagree with either, but I'm not sure if I can agree with either, right? It's somewhere in between, right? That's what I was getting at. So anyway, that's just what I encourage, the faculty members that are peers of mine and new graduate students is take time and find ways and be creative, to have soft skills. I was very fortunate at Iowa State. I was part of the Emerging Leadership Academy, which took graduate students from multiple departments, even outside of the College of Ag, to train us to basically be at the C level, right? How do you handle big systematic problems? How do you handle PR conflicts? How do you handle HR conflicts? How do you manage in my case, a $500 million budget, right? How do you present P&L? How do you talk about things that are in the black or in the red? What KPIs do you show? What do you not show, right? I was fortunate that not that I was complete out of graduate school by any means. Trust me, I took my lumps. I, drank out of the fire hose for sure. But at least I had some training and at least I knew the diction and the jargon that allowed me to maybe walk instead of crawl out of graduate school. I definitely didn't run, but at least I was able to walk. How about that, Jim? So
I really like your use of the word soft skills, and whether that's learning how to present in front of a group better, knowing KPIs. And I think back to my transcript. It was not a scientist transcript. I took classes in ag econ. I took classes in feed milling, trying to be a little more well-rounded. I mean, the ag econ, so you can understand ROIs and you can understand P&Ls and you can understand negatives. I took a class with Ted Schroeder. Part of the class was looking at checkoff funds and how those impacted demands. Those had absolutely nothing to do with amino acid ratios, ATP, the Krebs cycle, but it made me a more well-rounded person and swine nutritionist. And I think your call to the professors out there to have more of those soft skills is appropriate, because we're in a situation where we don't have the time to sit around and do a whole lot of what ifs. What if I could do anything? Because of whatever, we're funding whatever the professors are doing. But we need to build those soft skills so somebody that can come into a system like yours and, like you said, walk instead of lay there in a fetal position going, oh, crap, what am I going to do?
What do I do? Yeah, I'm just used to just doing this 5-month research project, and then I get another 5-month research project, and then I get another 5-month research project. And then I presented at these scientific conferences. I wrote it up, called it a thesis or a dissertation, defended it, went through the prelim process. I had these assigned classes that I needed to take, and that was it. Okay, so what happens when you're not working on one problem at a time, but you're working at 10 to 15 problems at a time, right? How do you segment that? Which gets priority, which doesn't? Which is a problem that you should delegate versus solving yourself, which is a problem that might have been delegated that you need to go, whoa, I got this one. Bring this back to me, right? This was important, but now this is urgent because here's why. And then more importantly, is how do you communicate all that, right?
Yes.
I think that is maybe the secret sauce to successful people within our industry. Is it doesn't mean they have to be polished or the best presenter or the best podcast guest or host, right? That does not mean that by any means, but their communication is very clear. It is well listened to, and they get the appropriate people involved, whether that's at the slat level or the boardroom level, and they do it very rapidly, right? Like it's like, hey, here's what we need to do. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to validate it. Any questions, right? And it's not just a one person who then relays it on. No, they're the ones who are relaying on, right? So within that, okay, you're going to write 7 chapters. You're going to do your lit review. Chapters, 2 through 6 are going to be, your 5 experiments. And then 7 is going to be, hey, here's what I learned. Here's what we should do forward. Where does that help that type of process, right? So that's the part where you need to find time, and it's time, right? Doesn't have to be cost, right? It's time. There's more than people out there to find avenues and ways for you. But yeah, the time to get that done. I think that's the key. And I would say, once again, not making excuses, but putting myself in the perspective of my peers that are faculty members. They get more asked of them today in terms of paperwork and, IACOC standards and grant writing and all that, than their predecessors did, right? Yeah. So, they're asked to be part of, more committees and whatever, so keep that in mind too, that their time and resources are limited. They no longer have the, the administrative support, in terms of, all that they used to, so their time is limited as well. And they have young families and all that stuff as well, right? So it's a time, right? You got to find the time to do it. But I would encourage grad students and faculty members, that those soft skills are really, really important. And I would just say it would be unfair to be critical without trying to help out. So for those that are listening, and they do need help, shoot me a note. We've done that in the past. We actually have a student right here at our feed desk that's actually shadowing us currently. We'd be more than happy to help out if we can. So,
well, I like to talk about it as liberal education, and I mean that with a small L. And those soft skills are part of a liberal education because it's outside of worrying about your sphere of concern. Whether it's minerals or amino acids or soybean use in pigs. If you can open up that box just a little bit, expose you to something better. And I use this example when I took bionutrition or biochemistry. It didn't make sense to me because it was broken up by segments. We're going to talk about this molecule, pyruvate.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the visual, right? Yes. 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 Yeah. Yes. Oh, completely agree. Both from a physiological and metallurgical, point of view. But then as well, okay, what does it mean economically? Jim, I probably kind of briefed over that. So I was talking about the soft skills, but whether a graduate student wants to be the next faculty member, understanding how are these grant institutions funded, right? How is USDA funded? How is US Soybean Board funded? How is Iowa Pork Producers funded? Where does that money come from? Who's providing that money and that resources? And then from a pig production perspective, as we started with capital right away. Okay. Yeah. What does it take to get a pig to market? Okay. Well, there's feed, medication, all those things. But okay. What's the capital behind it? Like, what's insurance look like? What's the operating loan look like? What are current interest rates like? All those things that go into getting that pig to market. What does payroll look like for a pork production system? Right? What does insurance and benefits and 401k look like for a pork production system, right? So just to try to understand that big picture. So if you're working for an additive or a pharmaceutical company and you bring molecule X to the market and you're like, hey, our research shows that it provides a ROI of 3-1 or 2.5-1. Well, does it or does it not? Mm-hmm. Right? And is that just on that, small limited research paper, scope, right? Or does it provide more benefits than that or less benefits than that? Maybe it's a camera technology or an AI technology. Hey, here's the ROI that it thinks that it provides to producers. Well, it really doesn't, because now we need to hire 2 more people to analyze that data and then communicate that data onto the slat level, right? So, there's $125K right there. That's, out of the window, right? So if they just have that broader perspective outside of just what's on that black and white research paper of, hey, here's how this was funded. This is where this came from. This was the need. This is how it fulfills the need. And hey, outside of just the 6 KPIs that are here in table 3 in this JAS article, right? This is how it really impacts a pork production system or a pork producer, however you want to frame that, in terms of his or her ROI for their operation. Now you've got it, right? So it can even be within the scope of your chapter 3 or chapter 4, but just kind of take the time to expand it out, right? How'd this get funded? Why did this get funded, right? Like, what need is this fulfilling, right? Okay, that's cool. That's good to know. I need to think about that in terms of how I present this paper and this presentation, et cetera. And then what does this really mean to the broader scope outside of just the 6 KPIs that I listed? So it doesn't have to be a 6-month externship. It can just be taking time within the framework of what they're currently working on. So
I called Ron Plain at University of Missouri. So that's going back in time.
Sure.
And asked him, I was working on my modeling paperwork with Dr. Schinkel, and he spent an hour on the phone with me going through current economic conditions and throwing out things that we could analyze to help better the model I was working on. That expanded my understanding of pork marketing. So that's just an example, although it's an old one, of, hey, maybe call Trey and you can understand soybean meal. Just think about what we talked about at soybeans, because it's one of my little things. The difference that you see in soybean meal crude protein between Ohio and Minnesota.
For sure, yes.
And how much impact that has on the profitability of a pig when you go from 49% to 43%.
Bingo. Yes, exactly. And then if you take the time to not only understand the nutrient differences between those soybean meal sources, but hey, let's introduce a concept known as basis. And let's introduce a concept known as, hey, we took a clock position on that. So we're locked in at this basis. So then all of a sudden when the Iran-US conflict happens and bean meal goes up 25 on the board, well, here's now the price of our bean meal relative to corn. Right? Now you've really got it, right? Now you've really got it. Yes.
But then you can have the conversation with the accountant of, do we sell that stuff? Exactly. How do we value it so we actually know that we're using the right value?
Yes, because here's what you really got it. And then, then how does it adjust our formulations? And then how does it affect the feed mill level? Because we did have these many contracts or this many loads booked.
Yeah.
But now, because of this change in, a price relationship among ingredients, now it's saying we should bring more distillers in. Right? Yeah. So now we need more loads of distillers. And now, hey, what do we do with these loads of these bean meals that you were talking about? Right? Or, hey, are we stuck here? Right? We're just going to have to eat this. And this increase our costs of production, right? That's where now, this is, now we're cooking, right? Now we have some ingredients, right? So yes, that's where I think, like, as we were talking about PhD and master students training, like that's just the one extra step of, boy, now we've got it, right?
Well, I think back to tryptophan usage at some of my customers. On paper, we need to get tryptophan in. It makes sense. We're going to put a pound in per ton. But what if they break a bag?
Yeah. What if it doesn't flow?
That shrink on that one bag ate away all the cross position that we had for 6 months because they didn't use a lot. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we as swine nutritionists think about have nothing to do with swine nutrition.
Agreed. Mm-hmm. So just with, tryptophan. So before it got granulated, right? I'm sure, Jim, you might have had a period of that time, right? So if it's sticky, are we adding a half pound or a pound and a half?
Yeah.
Right? Within those scales, right? So what's our margin of error in terms of what we're able to add it at, right? So something like, okay, let's go even more macro scale. Let's talk about bakery. Hey, bakery's pricing in. Right. And all of a sudden it gets July and August. And guess what? I have 80 foot of bakery that can't flow. Right. What do I do with it then? Oh, well, we're going to bin whip it. Okay. That's a cost. A bin whip's $35,000. Mm-hmm. Right. We're going to go clear it out. Right. Dump it, all this stuff. Maybe half of it's usable. All those savings that you just, had penciled in are now all gone.
Yeah.
Right. Same with, modeling, right? So let's just say we're acceptable with this energy or distiller's ratio or fiber, however you want to, term that, right? And go, okay, this is our projected average daily gain. We're going to have this many days on feed, et cetera. And then what happens if the economics change or the days on feed change or whatever, to where it's like, okay, we're going to be good with this strategy, but that strategy changed. And now we're 5 to 6 pounds light.
Yeah.
Right now, hey, all those savings of those extra distillers that you've been penciling in the past 4 or 5 months have now bit you, right?
Yeah.
Like those are just things you have to think through and be able to adjust really fast. So, Jim, I am trying to bald and gray as fast as you through this process. So even within my short 9 years, as we were talking about different stages of our career, I'm not sure if I've ever had a normal year. So, and I don't even know what a normal year is, right? So 2017, like 2 months on the job, the Trump tariffs got imposed, right? So soybeans crash, pigs crash. 2018 was, hey, China's breaking with African swine fever. Futures are going to go through the roof. This is going to be 2014 all over again. Yeah, it never happened, right? Like we might have exported a couple more loads to China. China's just like, hey, we're going to eat less, and we'll just grab it from Brazil. Then, 2019, 2020, 2021, we all know what that was, right? COVID. I mean, I saw every single range of impacts there was. 2022, 2023, 2024, high price corn, low price pigs, et cetera. And then 25 and 26, hey, we've had great profits, but disease has been horrible. So do we have the pigs to actually take advantage of those profits, right? So, you have to be able to have a full understanding of everything from the system level down to that amino acid level, right? Like clear down to that thimble. And be able to adjust really quickly and be able to think, okay, if we make this adjustment at the system level, this is what it means to formulations. And then if we adjust formulations, this is what it means back to the system level. And be able to do that really quickly and have your projections, 5, 6, 7 months out to be able to ebb and flow and adjust with that to try to manage the checkbook as best as you possibly can, right?
So as you're working with grad students or new employees, how do you instill in them that 80% is good enough?
Ooh, great question. So I've kind of phrased that, Jim, as I think oftentimes when I see graduate students or new employees, whether they're here or other places that I've talked to my peers about, like, hey, I'm struggling with this employee. What advice do you have? Or, hey, I just can't get them to see the bigger picture. Like, what have you done? I kind of hear, new students or new employees ask, well, what's my role? What's my responsibilities? Like they're just kind of stuck with, well, what am I supposed to do? So can we make that clear? Okay. Right? About, hey, here's the expectations. And then more importantly, how do we foster that it's not necessarily about the roles and responsibilities. It's how do I generate value? Right? I think if you're coming out as a new graduate student or a new employee and you have the ability to identify the weaknesses in your team, the weaknesses in your system, and be like, oh, I can step up here. Mm-hmm. This is a strength of mine that I'm really good at. So whether that be math and Excel projections or modeling, or whether that be communicating, these different responses or, hey, these different action items, or whether that be super detailed oriented and taking a deep dive on how far off are we from our proposed feed budgets and what we actually deliver, and where are those errors and where are those mistakes occurring, and is there a way that we can fix them? Whatever, versus them worried about, hey, I just want to do my role, my job. I just want to do A and B and that's it, right? I don't know how many conversations I've had maybe over the past 5 years that have been based around that concept, both on the younger employee or new student size. And then I would say my peers, boy, I'm really struggling with X. What do you suggest I do? Right? Because I just can't get them to see the bigger picture. And I'm like, well, have you created that culture or laid out the question, hey, how can you help us create value here? Right? Like, what do you think that you could step up on and be good with? Right? And then vice versa, then instilling that in the new employee, like, hey, if you want to be successful in any organization or any role, it's about generating value, right? It's about generating, impact and results and influence and buy-in, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be a monetary value. Maybe it's just a higher degree of execution of what we're currently doing, right?
Yeah.
How do you go do that versus then, well, I just do a QA report, or I just formulate these diets and send them on, or I just do this update on our target weight spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you become a value creator versus just a processor, right? Like, I just do this. I just do this. I just do this. I think that is the way I phrased it is, hey, how do you encourage those employees to create value? And then how do you encourage the employee to find where that value is and then how they can step up?
So what are some of the tools that you've used with your team to encourage looking for value?
Sure. I think I've laid out some bigger picture questions like we've talked about, Jim.
Okay.
To where like, hey, we made this formulation adjustment. What does this mean to days on feed? And do we have enough barns in this flow and to hit that target weight now? Or what does this mean in terms of our loads of soybean meal needed at this feed mill? And do we have enough contracts to cover that? Or are we going to be on the spot market? Would you be okay with being on the spot market? Or do we need to go ask for, a basis quote or flat price that or et cetera? Or, hey, we are, dealing with a PRRS or PD break. So therefore we're not going to wean pigs for 4 to 8 weeks out of this sow farm. What does it mean for the pigs currently on feed? Right? Because now they might have 4 to 6 more weeks of space and days on feed currently. So, hey, can we adjust those formulations for that flow? Should we adjust the formulations for that flow? Right? Can we take lemons and make lemonade? Yeah. Right? Like, hey, what do we do now? Right? So I think it's just been those. I don't think I've had this structured, written down plan to be like, hey, here's my keys to the success, right? First of all, I don't have time for that. Second of all, I don't know if I'm that smart or that strategic. But what I've done is I've tried to just take small world scenarios that they've seen. Hey, we've adjusted this formulation, or you said in this meeting where you got this news. And as I'm working on the problem, I ask them to work on the problem. Say, hey, what does this mean? Like, what does this mean in terms of the system? What does this mean in terms of our formulations? What does this mean in terms of our strategy? What does this mean in terms of our financial position or hedges or risks, et cetera, right? So, I think I've just taken those learning moments of I went through them. And the best part is if you go through with that, especially as we started with, the new generation of students might not have the stockmanship or the quote unquote animal agriculture background that we have. Every now and then they come up with a really good idea or a different perspective than what you were thinking about, being like, Oh, I didn't think about it that way. That's really, really good, actually.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes as nutritionists, we can be very type A people and very possessive and very,
No, I disagree
yeah,
completely.
well, I'm going to figure this out, right? I'm going to figure this out, right? Like I can do this, right? I think it takes courage and trust to open up your thought process to others on your team to be like, hey, why don't you work on this too?
Yeah.
That takes some courage, right? To do that. And,
Yeah.
some openness to do that. And that, man, it's extremely rewarding. Let me tell you, when you go through that process and you take that step to be like, hey, here's what I'm working on the next 2 hours. You want to work on this too? Or you want to pull up a seat and work alongside me on this? I think sometimes people are afraid, whether it's imposter syndrome or just exposing like, boy, this is a guess. Just to let everyone know, like this is me guessing as best as I can on this. Because sometimes you're trying to predict the future, and good luck with that, right? If we did that, we probably wouldn't be swine nutritionists. We'd be, on the stock market or something like that, right, Jim? That's really cool and really rewarding. So, with new employees in terms of training them or new students that are coming out, those are just some things that I've had success with, et cetera. So.
Well, I think that's a tough one because we are taught that we are going to be the expert in our field. Those 6 chapters, 7 chapters, when you present, you are going to be the smartest person on that project, on that thing at that moment. And we don't transition that to, okay, once you go out that door, you're going to have to make a lot of assumptions.
Yes.
And where can you be the expert without being the expert and saying, okay, I've got enough information, let's go forward. Yep. And I think that stumbles a lot of us. It still stumbles me, and I've been doing it for 28 years.
Yes, exactly. As I said, like we joked, we were 40 minutes in the podcast, we hadn't talked about nutrition. I said, oh, that's the easy part, right?
Exactly.
It's the modeling, it's the projection, it's the ever-changing economic, it's the system, it's the manufacturing and logistics piece. That's the hard part, right? Mm-hmm. I would say also something that, is very tough to prepare for in graduate school, even in the experience that I had at Iowa State and under John Patience, wasn't fully prepared, is the weight. I think that nutritionists carry, right? Let's talk about like the people aspect of it, right? The weight of managing the checkbook, basically, for your pig owner in your system and your pork producers. And then if you're fortunate to be in my position, then the weight of the people that report to you, right? And what they're going through. So there have been times where we've lost $40-50 a pig, and you're trying to manage that weight, right? Basically, you're trying to manage the checkbook and also the weight of that. There are times where, hey, things have been profitable, and unfortunately one of your customers or yourself set a sow farm break with PRRS and PD. Now you have to break the news of, hey, here's what the financial forecast looks like now. And you've had to carry that weight. So there's that at the system level, the checkbook level, the budget P&L level. Then there's also the weight of the people level. I've had team members that have had cancer bouts. I've had team members that have lost kids. I've had my predecessor died suddenly. That's the reason I got, in the managing partner position I'm at. I have team members that are recently engaged and trying to figure out their next stage of life. I have new parents. I'm a young parent, right? That's trying to keep my poop in a group, right? Make sure that my kids are everywhere, right? That weight, all of that. We as nutritionists, 'cause we're type A people, we're the experts. We're the math people. We don't talk about that ever. Mm-hmm. We aren't prepared for that. Mm-hmm. I think, the veterinarians, they do a really good job of that. They've talked about their mental health or, some of the issues that they've had within their profession. And they have seminars at it on their conferences, right? About the weight, about how, hey, you can't save every animal, right? You can't treat every animal, right? Like sometimes, the virus and disease will continue to ask more questions of than what you have proper, answers for, right? I think at the nutritionist level, maybe it's just because there's just so few of us that we just don't have the resources or the numbers for that. But talk about the weight of just managing not only the financial aspects, but then your team aspects. That's something that graduate school, the more you're aware of, maybe the better you're prepared to handle it. But that's just something in terms of like those soft skills. Those are things that I try to pass along when I talk to graduate students is, hey, okay, we can talk about, tryptophan ratio. Should we be at, 19, 20, what number do you want to be? Should we go down to 17 and a half when it's bad? That's the easy part, right? Yeah. The hard part is what do you do when someone comes in saying, hey, Trey, I got this diagnosis. What do I do? Hey, I have great news. I got engaged. We're not sure where our next chapter is going to be. We'll figure it out. What options are for me on your team? Hey, I've had, my director of feed mills. Hey, family member had some issues. We're going to adopt a couple kids. So going to miss some time going through this process. Right? How do you handle that? How do you go through those type of things? And then, hey, life is going to throw you curveballs. I've had, my father went through a terrible health episode, a couple years ago, is a quadriplegic. My wife's family, has had some health issues and stuff like that. Like, how do you go through that? Got 2 young kids that need to get to t-ball practice and dance practice. And hey, our daycare center all of a sudden closed with 24 hours notice. So now how do we balance that work-life relationship? Like that to me is, as you're talking to graduate students or you're talking to new employees, or you're talking to, hey, who's the next Jim and Trey? Mm-hmm. Like that, I think we need to talk about more is, be prepared for the weight of the P&L and the checkbook and the $500 million or whatever that budget is out there. And then be prepared for the people weight too, yours and others, because they're going to see you as an expert and they're going to look to you to help them guide them through whatever they're dealing with at that time. Because they see how you handle decisions. They see how you handle problems. And they're going to seek you out through their tough times too. So be prepared for that. I think that's something that we don't talk out loud about enough, to just be prepared for that. And how do you deal with that? And so that would be another thing I'd throw out too for our patio pondering here this afternoon.
We just left the coffee and went into some really nice bourbon on that one.
Yes, we did, for sure.
It got a little heavy. Mental health is a big deal in ag, and we talk about it a lot on the farmer side, suicides. And there was a high-profile suicide in Iowa that was published about last month. But I think it's more than just the farmer, and it's more than just the veterinarian. It's all of us.
Yes,
and I
think
if we can give ourselves and our team just a little bit of grace, I think you'd go a long ways.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, so, if you're a 24-year-old grad student, 25-year-old grad student, listening to this podcast, why do I not know that I'm, not learning in this institution? Those are some things, right? The soft skills, the dealing with the pressure, expectations, weight, however you want to term that, right? Of not only the business aspect, of the financial aspect, but the people aspect too, right? And you might not have a report. Maybe it's someone that you're reporting to that's going through some tough times, or maybe it's someone that you're trying to get bought into your feed program that's going through some tough times, right? Like how do you help them out? How do you help shape, that tough time? How do you get them to buy in when all they're worried about is that food, back to that food, water, shelter. Yeah. They're down here, right? And you're trying to get them to do this new protocol, but they're down here, right? How do you help get them to that level of that pyramid, right? Those are just things that you're not taught in a textbook. You're not taught Nutrition 501, right? You're not taught those things. That's what life throws at you. So just be prepared that comes with the job too.
But those are skills that you can learn as you're working with your team in grad school.
Yes, for sure. Yes, you can.
You know, whether it's me taking bionutrition exam and it's really kicking my butt, or Trey's got a whole bunch of pigs he's got to weigh the next 2 weeks. You know, there's things that we can learn as we work with our teams in grad school.
Yes.
And I think if we can encourage the professors to use that as a soft skill teaching opportunity, hey, we're a team. We got to work together.
Oh, for sure.
That'll pay dividends down the road.
Yes, it will. Yeah. Some of my dearest friends, right? I learned some of those lessons in grad school. Some of my dearest friends were becoming new parents for the first time, right? Mm-hmm. And trying to balance, parenthood, being a grad student, and maybe their significant other was, had a career. And then also going through those deals where, hey, now they've defended their master's or PhD and are looking for a role and opportunity, but they're also thinking about where their significant other is going to be and what role and opportunity are they going to have, right? So for sure, graduate school can prepare you for that if you have that team environment and you have that friend environment to be like, hey, let me kind of go through life with you too, just a little bit, right? That's for sure you can learn those things and would encourage you to do so.
Well, Trey, we've covered a lot of ground, and like we talked about it at minute 40, we didn't talk crap about feeding pigs from a nutrition standpoint. And okay, here's a little secret that Trey let out, everybody. Most of us agree on most of it.
Yes, yeah. So we're pretty similar. We're all dealing with the same changes at the same time, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
It's just how we cut that piece of pie. We all cook the pie about the same. It's just we're going to have 8 pieces. We're going to have 6 pieces, 3 pieces. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's kind of what variation of that problem you're dealing with at the time, right? So I kind of talked about the different changes, throughout the decade that I've been a nutritionist. Well, that all impacted, the businesses that I work with just a little bit differently, right? So yeah, maybe here was quote unquote in generality of what I did, right? But I did this differently here and this differently here and this differently here because the economic scenario was different, or maybe the ingredient availability was different, or maybe the checkbook constraints were different, right?
But I would say, Trey, the difference between 1998 when I graduated and 2026 is there is more humanity in our workplace.
Definitely agree.
And I think that helps with what you brought up about dealing with challenges with your team, how you develop those soft skills. It's accepted for you to go to your boss and say, hey, X happened. Whereas when I got out, it's like, so you got to stay out Friday night and miss your son's football game. Sorry.
Yeah, too bad. Yeah, deal with it. Yes. Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, and I think that will continue to evolve over the next 5 to 30 years of my career, Jim. Yeah. I think when we talked about like the undergraduate population, right, and how it's mostly female, like our industry has adapted to, hey, we might have maternity leaves of our key people multiple times, and that's completely fine. We'll just figure it out. You know what I mean? Yeah. Versus then, maybe 15, 20 years ago, like, oh, we can't have that. Like, we can't have our nutritionist out for 2 months. Like, we can't do that, right? Like, I think that'll just continue to evolve along many different facets. I just picked that out as an example, right? So, yeah, for sure.
Well, I worked with a companion animal nutritionist that was older than me, and so she had a little more experience. She took her computer with her on RAGBRAI.
Oh, sure.
Because she was worried that a mill would need her help, so she would get on the Wi-Fi outside Okoboji in her tent doing rations at 9 o'clock at night when she should be drinking beer and having fun with all the crazies on RAGBRAI. And you balance that with my daughter when she just did maternity leave for my granddaughter. Her boss says, I do not want to talk to you, hear from you, or get an email from you until you come back from maternity leave. And he said, if there's something important that you need to know, I will let you know. You go do maternity leave. That's when she told me that, it just blew me away. Like, wow.
Yeah, that's happened relatively quick, right? In the grand scheme of things, within quote unquote a kind of a career generation, right? As that happened, yes. So, on
one hand, it makes your job as a supervisor. I don't supervise anybody, not even myself sometimes. It makes it easier on one hand and more difficult on the other.
For sure. Yeah, there's pros and
You got
cons.
to juggle a little differently.
Just juggle differently. Exactly. That's a great way of putting it. So, yeah. Want to talk about any nutrition topics or anything like that, Jim?
I just got back from China. My consulting work that I'm working with China is working on wean to finish and helping the larger customers that we work with understand budgets, the feed program, and how that impacts their profitability. And the thing that the Chinese industry has dealt with is massive profitability. ASF, COVID, and government intervention. They were making money hand over fist. And it didn't matter if they fed them right or fed them wrong, they were making money. Now they're losing $20 to $100 a pig. And when I put up a budget that you and I would work with, nine feeds from 7 kilos, 15 pounds to 285 pounds, and had 9 feeds in it, they looked at me like I was freaking crazy and had horns coming out my head and had one eye. When I tried to talk about how you can improve efficiency, improve profitability, they were blown away because feed was just feed. And there are some smart people in China that have gotten PhDs in China and the United States that know how to feed pigs. And they're feeding pigs like we did before I went to grad school. For me to help them convince to go to an extra grow finish diet, it's going to be all soft skills. It's not going to be nutrition.
Yeah, for sure.
The difficult part for me and you, we'd say, okay, we're going to divide this at 100 kilos. We're going to do it at 75 kilos. And is it going to be 0.95 lysine? Is it going to be 0.85? We could get that hammered out in a day. You and I are chatting back and forth. But in reality, it's soft skills of convincing that producer, hey, let's try this.
It is. Yes, it is.
And changing the mantra from my feed efficiency has to be 2-3 to, I lost 5 RMB per pig instead of 30.
Yes.
So the nutrition, like you said, is easy.
Yeah, the nutrition's the easy part. It's whether it's the boardroom or the slat level, like the execution piece and the buy-in piece as you were getting in. That's the big part, right? So I once again talking back to the graduate student, work on those skills. Work on, hey, what does this particular person or these particular group of people in this boardroom, what do they want to see? What is their key KPI? You can have your key KPI, right? Mine might be, caloric efficiency or, feed cost per pound of carcass gain or whatever it may be. What does that person across from the table care about, right? So if they're really nervous or keyed in on FCR, then okay, let's lead with that. Hey, I want to start this conversation with FCR. You are used to a 2-3 FCR, and that has been outstanding for the past 20 years. But you no longer lived 20 years ago, right? You live in 2026, and here's your economic reality, right? So, just address the elephant in the room and be like, hey, in this reality, like I know you've been focused on FCR for a long time, and that's been a great thing. That's the reason that you're in this room. To keep you in this room in 2027, 2028, 2029, I need you to listen to this, right? And you just start from there versus then going, you talk about it for 20 minutes and then all of a sudden you get the question, hey, what about FCR? Right? And it's like, oh yeah, it's going to get worse, right? Sorry, it's going to get worse. I hope you didn't see that, but it's going to get worse, right?
So ignore that slide.
Yeah, ignore that slide, right? Let's just move past that, right? Let's just keep going. So it's those type of things. I had a really, really good advisor. I talked about John Patience. I had great advisors at Iowa State. Elizabeth Lonergan was a great advisor. Spent a year with me as I was going through this leadership academy, and we read this book to get together. It's called Getting to Yes. And it's had multiple editions. It's an old book. I believe it came out from Harvard. I think it came out in the 80s. So it's on its 8th or 9th different edition, but it is really, really good. No matter your personality type, if you're a people person, if one-to-one conversations scare the living bejesus out of you, if you're great in a group dynamic, or as soon as you put the second person in there, you clam up, you don't like presenting, it is just a great book across all personalities and all communicators about, hey, how do I get to yes? And it goes through some of those strategies that I was just talking about, like, hey, let's just acknowledge the elephant, right? So, hey, put myself in the other person's chair. I know that they're going to question this. Okay, let's lead with it, right? Like, hey, I know that you're proud of this and this is what got you here. But to keep you here in this room for the next year, I need you to listen to me, right? And then you just go through it. So now you've acknowledged that, hey, I know you're going to ask me about this and I know that this is important to you. But here's why I need you to think about it a little bit differently. I'm trying to keep you in business. I'm trying to keep you in this room, right? Trying to keep us successful, right? So those type of strategies are in that book. It is really good. It's, the version I have, I was trying to look over there, it's maybe 80 to 90 pages. You could read it on a trip to China and back, really easy. So just once again, talk about those soft skills. Like, hey, instead of going to, once you're done out of grad school and you hop on Netflix or Hulu or whatever, like read those type of books. Hey, how do I negotiate? How do I handle conflict? How do I get people to say yes to my thought process? Because we can have a key KPI. Our KPI, in this case is RMB, right, Jim? Do I have that right?
Yeah, RMB. Yep.
Yeah, RMB, right? Or US dollars, or, it might be, you name it, cost per space, cost per pound of gain, et cetera. That might be our KPI. Their KPI might be different. And we might think of that, FCR as nutritionists, we might think of that as an output, not an input or a KPI, right? That's an output. That's a ripple effect of the strategy to manage your checkbook, right? So, okay, how do we get them to say yes if that's really what they're going to be focused on? Okay, well, let's maybe address that head on. Let's maybe end with that, right? To be like, hey, after this 5 minutes of dialogue, I know your first question is going to be this. Let's acknowledge it, right? So you set the tone. You have allowed to be like, hey, I know this means a lot to you and I hear you, but here's why we need to set this aside, right? You're on offense and you're not as on defense, quote unquote, supposed to be the expert, right? So I think those type of things, as we're defending whatever nutrition strategies we decide to make, are really important.
Well, I think you just laid out my strategy for my June visit to China.
You're welcome, Jim.
The one thing that was missing in your whole discussion was to get to know what somebody's key KPI is, you have to ask questions.
Yes, you do.
Whether that's before or during, so that you understand. And we're not very good at that.
No.
We will ask questions like, okay, why is a feed conversion better here? Why? But we don't ask those questions of, okay, Trey, can you explain better why you think this KPI is important to you?
Yes, exactly.
And I think those are the ones that set apart the people that can really get to yes better.
Yes, and you have to create the runway to let people talk about themselves and how they got there. It's my favorite part about this podcast, Jim. I listen to this podcast a lot, is you just kind of create the runway to be like, hey, how do you get in this industry and what do you do and what are you working on? Most podcasts are, okay, tell me about your product. What does it do? And then moves on, right? If you create the runway, you can get great dialogue, right? We've touched on a lot of different subjects in this hour and a half already.
Yeah.
So if you start off with the question, and let's just say you're a fresh employee or fresh out of grad school, or you're a new nutritionist, you're a new hire. Let's just say even you're in your 40s and 50s, and now all of a sudden you have this new clientele or new pig owner group or whatever it may be. Ask just some big opening questions. Hey, how'd you get to be in this room?
Yeah.
Like, hey, I've read a lot about you, but how'd you get to this point? And what were some hurdles that you overcame? And what were some successes that got you to this point? Those are questions that I ask a lot in my interview process with different systems. And probably the reason that I chose AMVC out of graduate school was those type of questions to be like, hey, you went kind of from, mostly cattle focused veterinarians to now maybe the 10th largest pork system in the US. How do you guys do that? Like, what did you learn? What would you do over? What hurdles did you run to? What are the hurdles that you're still running into, right? Like, and once again, how do you separate yourselves as an interviewee? If you ask that type of question, boy, all of a sudden people are going to go like, darn, like, that's impressive, right?
Number one, he read about us. Number two, he thought about what he read about us.
Yes, bingo. So those are type of things when I'm introducing myself to a new customer Or let's just say we're working with a new feed mill, right? Hey, or let's just say a new salesperson comes in to pitch me. Maybe it's a product that I'm already using. But hey, I have a new account manager assigned to me. Those are type of questions that I ask first. Hey, what was your journey here? How'd you get here? And what have you learned? What do you struggle with? What are you currently struggling with? What made you successful to get to this point? Because if you give them that runway, they'll tell you what you need to know. And then if you do a great job of storing that information, whether you're a note taker, whether you're a visual person, hey, I'm going to remember this room. I'm going to remember what they were wearing. I'm going to remember, what I had for lunch. If it was a lunch conversation, like whatever you need to have that key. Then when you're having those crucial conversations, about, hey, we need to make a shift in our feed program strategy. And this is how I'm going to keep you in business. Or this is how we're going to make an extra, million or 2 million. Or, hey, this is how we're going to do A, B, and C in this crisis, right? You've now allowed yourself to get to yes quicker and more often. And it's just asking some questions and being a good human being. That's all it is, right? It's just saying like, hey, don't have the generic, hey, tell me about yourself, right? It is that, but it's just asking it just a little bit differently. It's like, hey, congratulations on the promotion. Tell me how you got it.
Yeah.
What did you learn? It's in the interview process. Hey, I've seen your growth. Tell me about it. Like, I'm sure it wasn't all sunshines and roses, right? Like, tell me about what were the growing pains? What are still the growing pains? Do you see yourself on the same trajectory, or are you scared that maybe, oh boy, we had this good run here, and maybe all these opportunities, we've taken advantage of them. Now we're wondering what's our next opportunity, right? Don't be afraid to ask questions like that. That whether you're the person that is being sold to or you're selling yourself, whether it's an interviewee or interviewer or whatever it may be, those are key questions. And if you remember those, then as you build that trust in that relationship, 2 years from now, 20 years from now, you can go, hey, I know this is what got you in this room. Listen to me here for 2 minutes. Let's think about this differently. Now you've got their attention, and you're more likely to get them to say yes.
And the way you've laid out asking the questions and how our discussion around questions has evolved, it's not the devious, I'm trying to figure out how I can sell you used car salesman standpoint. Well, tell me, how did that make you feel? It's truly you want to get to know somebody so you can see if you can work together or if there's something that you can help each other with. I think that sets the questioning apart. It's questioning to learn, not questioning to deceive.
Yes. Yeah. I always say people can tell when you're being fake really, really fast, right? Really fast. So yeah, how do you be genuine? Well, you have to be genuine first.
Yeah.
Right. So how do I be genuine? Well, just be genuine first, right? Just be a good person. I think that goes back to the weight conversation we had a little bit ago, right? We're all people, right? The very first thing that we talked was capital and labor, people and people, right?
Yeah.
We're all people. So, when you're introducing yourself new, yes, you are doing a, quote unquote, a profile review. You are doing a background check. You are doing all that information. But you're coming at it from a people perspective, a person perspective, a genuine perspective, not from one of the worst questions is, hey, what keeps you up at night? Like, it's the icebreaker question. It's like, oh, let me tell you about the 5 worst things that are going on in my day currently. That's how we're going to start off the conversation. Like,
Trey kept me up last night.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if that's the first question to be asked, my impression to you when I see you at a World Pork Expo or the next whatever is going to be negative, right? If that's the question that you leave with, I'm going to be like, oh, I want to talk about someone that asked about like, hey, how'd your kid make you smile this past week?
Yeah.
Those are people I want to hang out with, right? Like, those are people I want to have a good bourbon with or a beer with, at World Pork Expo, or those type of people, not the people that say, hey, tell me about your five biggest struggles that you've had, or, et cetera. Like, hey, we can get to that point of the conversation. And if you provide the runway, it will just occur, right?
Totally.
It'll happen. Don't lead with that, right? You're missing the boat and you're actually causing more damage than good.
As you're talking about that, I'm thinking how I would interview. And I one of the questions that came up was, hey, Trey, can you tell me one of the best memories you had working with Dr. Patience in grad school?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
that's
how
a
could
great
that
question.
open up to all kinds of stuff?
Yeah.
You don't know where it goes.
Yes. Yeah. It's just that extra genuine wording or that extra personality wording of a question. It's the same question of, hey, tell me about your graduate school experience. Right? It's that question, but instead you've personalized it, be like, hey, I've read up on you just a little bit. I've done my homework. I know you stuttered under John. So let's talk about John.
Yeah.
And what impact he had on you in your life, right? Like, it's the same question. It's just asked differently. Like those are key, right? So we started, before the podcast, Jim, I follow you and hey, like very first question was, hey, heard you got a gut punch, right? The very first question, right? I could have asked that, hey, Jim, how are you doing? That's generic. It's like, you could ask that to anyone. Yeah. But instead it's like, hey, Jim, I know that like you kind of got your butt kicked literally the past 3 weeks. How you doing? Like, et cetera, right? So it's, it's those type of things that set people apart, set nutritionists apart, set successful people apart versus people being like, man, they just seem stuck. Why are they stuck? Sometimes it's just doing just a little extra. I'm a big thank you note person. I'm in the middle of millennials, right? In terms of that, I think thank you notes are an absolute lost art within millennials. And once you get, clear down to my kids, they don't even know what a note or pin is, right? Let alone, you actually write. Yeah, you don't type or tap or, have a stylist or et cetera, right? So just taking a little bit of time at the end of the day or the end of the week to write 3 to 5 thank you notes. Once again, who does that these days, right? No one does. In fact, I received probably 2 thank you notes in 2025 from people that I work with, right? So just think about all the sales or the people or the product, the volume, however you want to capitalize that. It's a huge number. I received 2 thank you notes last year, right? So think about if I send a thank you note on what impact that has to people that are selling me something or someone that I'm working with or someone that I noticed at the SLAT level that was doing something really special on my visit, right? Think about the impact that has. And that takes 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Like, it's nothing, right? So it's those type of little things, whether it's in questions or your actions, that's how when you go to the SLAT level and be like, hey, Aaron, hey, Jose, hey, Emily, hey, Marie, I need you to do this. And here's why, right? Or, hey, I know you got 5 things on your plate. Can you make this number 6 for me? And can you follow up on me here within a month? When you've done those type of things, when you're genuine, when you care about them as a person, they're more likely to say, yeah, Trey, we can do that, right? Same at the boardroom level, right? Same at the supplier producer interaction level, right? If you're just doing those little things and you care about them as a person first, you're more likely to get to yes, right?
Well, I think we hit on soft skills yet again.
Yeah.
And so much of what we do in our lives as nutritionists, as leaders, as parents, as family members, is those soft skills. And you talk to my eldest daughter, and then you talk to my son that's 16 about how I approach them. They'd be like, God, he was an ass. Like, yeah, I was. Yep.
On purpose. On purpose, yes.
Yeah. And my youngest would be like, yeah, he doesn't yell at me like he yelled at you. Like, well, because I learned the soft skills. Yes. I know how to make you feel bad without yelling at you now.
Yes. Yeah. And I would say too, sometimes it's the boy who cried wolf, right? If you're always yelling, if you're always flying off the handle, at some point in time it becomes numb.
Oh yeah.
Right? If you're always sending, we need to do better every day, some point in time they become numb to that response, right? If you use that appropriately and you went through your decision tree to be like, yes, this is when I need to discipline my kid, or hey, here's where I need to say I'm disappointed in our level of execution, and here's why. Now it has meaning. Now it has impact. Now it has influence. So when you do use quote unquote the hammer, it has results. If you're always just nailing away, eventually that nail is in the wood and you can't go any further, right? You can do this all you want. It's going to be flush with that board.
Or you come out with an 8-pound sledge instead of a tack hammer.
Yes.
Oh, he really means
He really means this, right? Like, oh yeah, when I use the word I'm disappointed, I don't use that word often. Like it has, oh boy, we need to listen, right? Like, yes. But once again, when you have that personal relationship and that people building, that word disappointed or we're not meeting expectations or we need to do better, now it's gravitas, right?
Yeah.
Versus then if you do that all the time, just saying, oh, well, we need to be better. 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 After the 10th time, it's like, and we're doing as good as we can. I don't care. Right?
Yeah. Just circular file. Yeah.
Exactly.
Trash. Yeah. Well, Trey, we've been at this for over an hour and a half, and I've loved our conversation. It's the best conversation you and I have ever had, but we end every podcast with 5 questions. And I love the questions because it gives me an insight into where my guests are in agriculture. So the first question is, what is one lesson from ag you carry with you every single day?
Sure. So mine actually comes from my livestock judging experience, Jim. And I know you've talked about this with previous guests before. It is decision making and standing behind that decision and going through your logic and reasons. If there are kids that are, 7 to, call it 17, that are thinking about 4-H or FFA, et cetera, of course I would encourage it. 2 great organizations. Second of all, would encourage some type of judging that has reasons or at least questions behind it for sure. As we were talking about, the soft skills, right? I think, I probably was learning soft skills at 7 years old, just saying, hey, I think this pig's more heavy muscled than this pig. Why? Because I saw it, right? And I'm going to describe it to you, right? Mm-hmm. So I think when we're going through those checkbook type questions and those financials and those systematic type questions, being able to present what I've prepared and what I've saw and what I know in a clear and concise way is extremely important. So I think that was one of the first lessons I learned in agriculture was, hey, what is your logic and defend it and present it in a clear and concise manner is a lesson I still use every day now 30 years later.
And the nice thing about the livestock judging, you can be wrong.
Yes, you can.
Them, but you can describe them correctly.
Yes. Yeah. And as we were talking about earlier, Jim, hey, I want to make this tryptophan change, but hey, if this bag breaks, we're not going to see any savings. Well, isn't that the whole reasons, right? To say like, that's the reason that we complement the animal, that we place behind the other animal, right? So, hey, the animal I had in second also does this, this, and this. And I can see how some would prefer that, right? Yeah. Like that's the whole point of that, right? So when we talk about scenarios, hey, this works, but it known that we don't have coverage out here. So if the market drops $10 a head, we might do this, or we might do this, or guess what? The savings that I'm presenting here isn't going to be here, right? Like that is livestock reasons 101 for sure. So
that's a great one. You're not the first one to mention that one. If you could have coffee with any historical figure in agriculture or food production, who would it be?
Oh boy, that is a great, great question. I'm going to say this to be twofold. So the first I would pick is Joel Schmidt. So he was my predecessor in terms of managing partner for AMVC. And he was about 5 months away from retirement. And I was going to take this role on, and it was planned. So we'd had conversations about the role and the expectations, etc. But man, I would give anything to have a cup of coffee with him now 4 years later to be like, hey, here's where we're at. This is cool. Hey, I wanted to ask you about this. How would have you handled this? Like, how did I do this right? Or, hey, I'm really proud of this, but what do you think? I would just, I'd do anything to have a cup of coffee with him right now. Like that would, and just be able to reflect on that. I think I've heard, peers of mine that unfortunately have lost a parent. it's usually the first, when you ask, hey, if you could have a conversation with anyone, that's immediately it comes to mind, mom, dad, etc. I'm, sure I'd have, others about that, that have been mentors of mine that as soon as they pass away, I'm like, oh, yeah, wish you could have, a good beer with them right now to just be like, hey, what do you think about this, etc. So then from there, right, from a historical figure that, more people would know or everyone would know, boy, that's a great question. I'm having 20 different thoughts going through my mind of people that I just thought were really cool, etc. So I'm stalling here, Jim. But boy, if I could pick, one off the top of my head that would be really, really good. One that I would really like to pick the brain now that is unfortunately passed too soon, is our Canadian colleague, Castellana. I think he was brilliant. And the peers of mine that have, been students that have been trained are some of the people that I ask questions first. He trained really, really good graduate students. Fortunate, my wife and I, we try to go to Banff Pork Seminar every year, A, because it's beautiful, and B, because I get to talk to those colleagues, in a casual setting and learn a lot from them. But now that, we're getting more into modeling and more into forecasting and more into getting away from the empirical method and the factorial method. There have been times where, man, I just love to be able to shoot him an email or give him a call or pick his brain on these things. So I think that would be my first choice, Jim. There's a lot of great ones. You could go through the historical ones, the Sleater Bowles, the Murphys, all those, right? All those, founders of different production systems are the first to do this. But one that in terms of, boy, I'd have questions with right away to help me out. I think I'd pick Joel and Case. So.
Those are great ones. And Keys was mentioned in my dissertation several times. So yeah. What is one quirky or underappreciated thing about ag more people should understand?
How much science goes behind it? Yeah, for sure. I just think as a scientist in our field, I don't think people or consumers or the general public understands how much technical expertise goes into the food that they consume every day. And especially within, quote unquote, U.S. production agriculture, and how there's a nutritionist and a veterinarian and a geneticist and more beyond that, the products that we use, a microbiologist, and, all those things. I could go on and on and on, and how much QA people are behind and how much lab analysis is behind this and how much benchtop chemistry is behind all of this. It is a story that I cannot tell enough. That would be my quirk about the ag industry is how much science and how many scientists, once again, going back to the people perspective, are behind what they eat every day.
Yeah, science is a great one. What is your favorite ag-related tool, product, or innovation?
Oh, boy. So the first one that got started is the bag sewer. So that was my first job. So my dad ran a cooperative feed mill, and to spend time with him in evenings and weekends if he was behind, I'd go up and try to push a broom as, a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old. The one thing that I could run pretty easy was the bag sewer. So I've always said that, if I ever get fired, I'm just going to find, a line and just go sew bags like the good old days. For sure. So that's a good one. But, beyond just that personal note, for our perspective, probably, the B complex vitamins, right? That allow the corn soy diet that we implement today, to be impactful and not rely on, the meat bone meal component, that we did. Boy, I think that's a big one, and one that we probably underappreciate. That should probably be the first question on every swine nutritionist prelim or defense, is be like, hey, how can we use a corn soy diet, and why couldn't we in the 1950s? That should be like an automatic pass fail. You know what I mean?
We're 5 minutes in, we're done.
Yep, we'll
see you in 3 weeks.
Yep. Try again. Yeah, I think that's a big one. We could go through a lot of that, in terms of innovations or whatever it may be. But for our profession, I think I'd pick that one. I think that's
a great one. And you're the first one to bring up B vitamins.
Sure. Well, the first nutritionist you've had on the podcast. So.
True. Yeah. Yeah. What is one small change that could make a big impact in ag's future?
Boy, that's a great question, because it's got to be small. It can't be big, like it can't be labor reform or, anything like that. I think one small change that could be made, and of course my peers that are within this field will say, well, that's not small, or we'd be doing it already, is to have our data platforms talk to each other.
That's huge.
Right? So it is huge. And it's not a small thing. It's a big thing, right? But we do an amazing job of collecting data at the SLAT level. We collect data on everything. We collect data on ingredients, finished feed samples, batches, and then at the SLAT level, every single category we're collecting data on. Like, for instance, who actually bred that sow? We're collecting data on highs and lows, water, etc. And you know what? About 99% of that data is stored in a database, and then is only pulled when an issue arises, or when someone finally has that free hour to be like, okay, I'm going to analyze a snippet of this and see if I can learn anything from it. And part of the reason that is we kind of have a capital labor crunch on our data analytics. We only live in that 5% margin business. So we can't have a whole bunch of analysts or, statisticians that's breaking that down for us every day. The second then component is, beyond the payroll capital piece, is none of our data systems talk to each other. So for example, my feed order data is stored in one place. My batching records stored in another place. My sow data is stored in this place. My grow finish data is stored in this place. High lows are stored in this place maybe, but usually they're at the SLAT level. My hedging data, my risk management data is in another database, right? So what coverages we have on, contracts we have on, et cetera, that's over here. My payroll data is over here. My kill sheet data is over here. And I could go on and on and on. I probably have data that lives maybe in 20 to 25 different places, and none of them talk to each other, right? So we have all this data to where we could probably make better decisions and better forecasts and be better not only at the systematic level, but clear down to the SLAT or the feed mill level or the feed desk level. And to me, that is frustrating. So I think that would be the small thing that I would change immediately. Is it would be great to just have all this data that we spend so much time, capital, and resources collecting, at least be able to talk to each other, at least be in the same spot, so then we can analyze it and make better decisions from, versus than it just living just in this app or this Excel sheet or this database, right?
And it's not just AMVC.
Oh, it's all of us.
Industry-wide.
Yes. Yeah, and that's something I've encouraged, when Pork Board or IPPA or when we're peer groups together, hey, what can we use this shared pool of resources that we're contributing to for the greater good of all of us? That has been my suggestion, to be hey, can we build, because we all don't have the capital to build. AMVC can't build a platform that build all these 20 things to talk to each other. We just don't have the people, don't have the capital, right? Can't justify the ROI, right? Every system's like that. But collectively, maybe we can get this, or maybe we can come together saying that, hey, you can provide us data, but it has to be this certain file, right? Or in this certain language. So then we can dump it into a common place to be able to analyze it. So, hey, if you want a sensor to read feed bins, or if you want a camera to read body composition, back fat level or heat detection, that's cool. But the data has to come this way, right? Or the U.S. pork industry, can't use it. So maybe it's a set of guidelines. Maybe it's a set of parameters that the data needs to be in, so that we can get systems to talk to each other. And when we are doing, those touch points, between this company and this company, it's easier. Maybe that's our solution, to be like, hey, we can't mandate, right? We don't have that power, but hey, we strongly suggest that data be in this format so we can use it, right?
And you think about our industry wide, including animal livestock or animal agriculture and crop, we have so much data that, as you illustrated. And what do we do with it?
Most of the time it sits there, right?
It fills up a hard drive, and then we're like, hey, this is 7 years old. What am I going to do with it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it gets pulled when issues arise. Mm-hmm. It gets pulled when a question gets asked. But hey, how often are we just routinely analyzing that data, looking for opportunities, looking for efficiencies? For example, we GPS all our feed mill trucks. Are we actually taking the most efficient route now that fuel and diesels went up, 40% here over the past month? No, but I'm looking at it. Right. And I'm looking at it because of that increase. Why wasn't I looking at that 4 or 5 months ago? Because there were more valuable things on my plate at that time. Right. So yeah, I think that's the component of the crux that we have in all production agriculture, including, crop, vegetable production, etc. Things of scale. We have all this data that basically just sits there unless the question gets asked or the issue arises.
And we use it usually to be a stick to beat somebody.
Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, yes.
As opposed to, hey, Juan has a 99% conception rate.
Yep.
This is awesome. He comes in like, well, Juan, why'd you screw up this week?
Yes. Yep. Bingo.
So, well, Trey, we're pushing 2 hours, which is longer than I expected, and this has been great. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule there in Audubon and spending time with us. I look forward to talking to you more, and we'll see you at World Pork Expo.
Yeah, see you at World Pork Expo, Jim. Look forward to it, and thanks for the platform. Oftentimes I get asked to talk about technical things or, hey, share my expertise. Thanks for the platform to talk about the people aspect as well. That is the nutrition, the pig part, might be the easier part. It's the people part that's the important part. So thanks for just providing the platform to just share some experiences on that aspect of our roles in our day-to-day too.
Well, I think you've offered some great nuggets for us to think about, whether it's the 2 books you mentioned, The Martian and Getting to Yes, and talking about how you can be a leader and ask those soft questions and help build those soft skills. I think are great suggestions for our industry.
Yeah, no, my pleasure, Jim.